Hey, everybody. Welcome to This Week in Pre-IPO Stocks podcast. With me, I have Evan Cohen, founder and chief operating officer with Vincent.com. It's a media company focused on alternative investments, and Clint Sorensen, chief investment officer at WellShield. It's an outsourced CIO and investment research company. I'm Aaron Dillon. We do venture capital funds for RIAs at AG Dillon & Co. All right, fellas, I am obsessed with the Alpha School in Texas. They have multiple different locations, but this is the school. I'm not sure if you heard about these guys, but this is the school that uses AI to teach the kids, okay? And they do school for like 2 hours a day, and these students are ranking like in the top 2% nationally of test scores. So just 2 hours of school a day, and in the afternoon they do some kind of like creative project, and they're crushing it, right? These kids are crushing it. This one fellow on X, which is why I'm bringing it up here, right? And also selfishly, I have 3 young kids, so I'm like geeking out over this based on all the stuff that we talk about every week. But he had a first grader that was advanced 2 grades in 5 months. Okay, he's like way ahead in math, way ahead in language, right? They said they have high school kids that are like graduating from high school at like 15. It's like Doogie Howser. Remember Doogie Howser? Love that guy. So it's like, this is what's happening. These people, so the AI, it's like every kid is like a customized AI tutor, right? And on each of the respective subjects, and it identifies gaps, and then it kind of like brings the kid along, right? So here's my question. This to me like really drives home this whole AI thing, right? And where it could really kind of be home. I think everyone's searching for use cases, right, on where AI is going to really make an impact. This one hits home because obviously people really care about their children's education. This thing's like working, and it's showing how this is a completely disruptive model to what current kind of education is today, right? So Clint, maybe I'll start with you because I know you have children, right? You have a child. And also you guys, I think you guys do homeschool, right? So that's a different model than I think some people are used to. So like maybe you could talk about your perspective on this AI thing, how that compares and contrasts with what you guys do. Just general thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think there's just tons of gems in terms of this this case study here. First being 2 hours of school, and the rest of the time, is built learning outside of the classroom. I mean, what really helped us make the decision to go homeschool, and very fortunate to be able to do that. My wife's a saint, but my daughter's completely self-sufficient now as a rising 7th grader. Like, she doesn't use us at all. She uses AI. She doesn't use us. She customizes her learning plan. She has a baked-in curriculum because it's online academy, but it is a little bit of school and a lot of life. Right, life skills. It's she gets to go out and she does theater, and she plays tennis, and she does sailing, and she does dance. She gets to go just experience life and be in the moment as much as possible. And I feel like it gave her life back versus before she was in a private school curriculum where she's under fluorescent lights all day.
Yeah,
everything's time test, right? Memorization, following a curriculum. And not to knock it, it just wasn't for us. I was like, this is so broken. This is teaching someone to be a worker in a factory, is my opinion of it. Not someone to be a leader and a creative. And I think when you go down the rabbit hole where AI eventually takes us, as long as it doesn't run into scale issues, we can debate that another time. But where this eventually takes us is, I think it raises the value of the creatives. And schooling is not exactly encouraging for creative thought, helping you develop that. And I think this is the type of curriculum, the type of structure that allows kids to be free and maintain. I think you're just maintaining and preserving their creativity versus giving it to, like, helping them learn it. I think it's something that they're already born with, and we strip away through rote memorization, scheduling, fluorescent lights, inside time, and structure.
So your program that you guys do now, that incorporates AI, or it doesn't incorporate
No.
AI?
So what you do is we have a base level curriculum, and then we supplement with other stuff, right? So my daughter's trying to write a book, and so she's using AI to create images for her book, right? To help her edit her book. So just teaching her how to do things that she's interested in and facilitate doing that using a computer, which we are all calling AI because it's the latest computing invention, but essentially just using a computer to help her do that, using it as a tool. And I saw something today that I forget who put it on X, but he said, your job's not going to be replaced by AI. It's going to be replaced by people using AI. And I love that. And that's the type of thing I'm trying to, teach my daughters. Leverage the tools that are available to you to do what you want to do and pursue your passions and remain creative.
Right. Okay. So Evan, what's your take on this, man? Like, I'm not sure. In fact, I've never asked you, I'm embarrassed to say I've never asked you if you're going to have kids, right? At some point down the road, or maybe you have them now. I don't know. But what are your thoughts on just AI? I mean, I have a 7-year-old, right? And so Clint's daughter's in 7th grade. I have an 8th grader, a 5th grader, and a 1st grader. I'm convinced like the 1st grader is going to be using AI in public schools before they get out of high school, right? I mean, is that a crazy idea? Do you think there's some legs to that? Like, what's your take on just this school in Texas? Like, what are your thoughts?
I mean, it all makes a lot of sense. The caveat, to start off, I don't have any kids, and my friends who have kids have told me the most important thing to do is never try to give advice to parents about parenting if you don't have any kids. So anyone who's listening to this, I just want to caveat that none of this is parental advice for any of y'all because I don't have any kids. But I can give experience, like my thoughts from my experience, which I grew up right on the cusp of like, I guess the internet age, right? I remember going to school and having to write a report where the teacher specifically said I wasn't allowed to use Google and I wasn't allowed to cite Wikipedia. And they were like, you have to go to the library and use the card catalog. I mean, I grew up in an era where we had to learn cursive, and I remember being in 3rd grade or 2nd grade writing cursive and being like, this is absolutely silly. So I personally, I have a strong belief that the way that people learn and the school curriculums do not evolve fast enough relative to the technology that we implement in everyday life, which in a lot of ways has created a somewhat antiquated educational system. So my opinion is like a school like this, I think is quite interesting. I think allowing kids to use the latest and greatest tools will allow them to be more successful in the future. Because I agree with the quote that Clint said, like at the end of the day, the younger the generation is, the more adapt and natural they are to using the most modern technologies. And then they can utilize these tools better than we can, and therefore they're probably going to replace us. So I believe in that wholeheartedly. On the other side, I as a a product of the public school system who did go all the way through high school in the public school system, even college public school as well. I do believe there's an element of socialization, and if everything is online, kids can develop an addiction to devices, addiction to the internet. So I do think it's important to have some sort of balance. A lot of the benefits of school are not curriculum-based education, but it's like, hey, learning to, buy your books, learning to be a part of the soccer team, learning to, socialize with friends and go figure out the lunchroom dynamics. I mean, I recently watched The Breakfast Club, which is one of my favorite movies.
Classic.
It's a classic, but it's not about school. It's about the experience of being a high schooler, and it resonates a lot with me. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of people. I think that there's a lot of ways that you can implement this technology to improve the way that young people learn. I think learning should be specialized. I think kids should be able to follow their curiosity, which is something that schools do not really do well. They never did when I was in school. So I think they could do a lot better job of enhancing curiosity, allowing people to be more creative. At the same time, I don't want parents to be so upset or distrusting of the school system that they remove them entirely, and then they don't get the socializing aspect of it. I can understand why it makes a lot of sense for both sorts of situations to exist. As again, I'm not a parent, but I definitely would like my children in the future to utilize the latest and greatest tools and not be told that they can't utilize technology to create better things, learn faster, learn smarter. I think that's exactly what they should do. I also want them to be socially natural.
Yeah. I mean, so look, my take on this. So I sent this to my wife, this text X post, and her response back to me was, this sounds great. Let's put the kids in it this summer, right? So like, let's take them out of school. Like, let's do it this summer. So I just like, look, I think most folks would probably look at the results of this type of school. It's called Alpha School in Texas, and they got a couple other locations across the country too. They're opening up one in New York City, which is why I kind of eyebrow raised at it. But it's just I don't know if people. What I find with most people, I would say it this way, is they just try to keep their kids in the fat part of the distribution curve, right? So like right now, that's kind of like go to college. Now, if you don't believe in going to college, right? Like Clinton, you and I talk about this all the time, like kind of our goals for our kids. And it's kind of this kind of cultural type view of like entrepreneurship and just, figuring out ways to make money and drive value in the business world and things like this. Like that's a very different, I think, perspective than what most people have, right? Most people are kind of in that fat part of the normal distribution curve, which is where I think education, like dramatic changes to this, like implementing it, for example, in public schools, AI, I think is going to be, and doing what they're doing at Alpha School, where it's like 2 hours of school. I think that's going to be a big leap for people. So unless like public schools are doing it, and then like the Harvard, Yales, Princeton's, Columbia's, Ohio State's, Michigan's, whatever, North Carolina's of the world, right?
Illinois.
Stanford, right? Yeah, right. Like unless those guys are like, oh yeah, we like find this advantageous, we'll give you a leg up on admissions if you do these things. I just don't see people being like, I'm going to send my kids to the AI school, right? What I can see happening, right? Because I live on the Upper East Side and everyone's a maniac up here. So like kids get out of school and then they go to like 4 or 5 hours of like after school stuff, whether it's sports, academics, chess, like you name it. Like these kids are like in fifth gear, which is, whatever. It's its own thing, right? I can see people being like, oh, this is great. It's 2 hours a day. Done. Like little Timmy will go to school at the school and then they'll go do the 2 hours of AI school, after public school, you know what I mean? Or private school or whatever. And we'll do both, you know what I mean? And that way you'll kind of fit in the normal part of the distribution curve, but then you get all the benefits of the AI piece too, right? I don't know. Evan, what do you think?
Well, as a kid who had to do Kumon after school, I could tell you the last thing I wanted to do after school was more learning. Or before school. So I don't know about the dual element of it. I look, as a parent, I can understand you want your kid to get ahead, and that makes a lot of sense. I think the challenge that I see here for this type of education, which I do believe we should implement across schools, public and private, is that in a world where the public schools and even some of the private schools are so union based, they're so against this new technology that could disrupt and take away jobs and could change the way that these schools it's just such a slow, antiquated industry. And I have one of my best friends works in ed tech. He's been doing it for 15 years. The sales cycles take forever. It's administration based. It's board of education based. It's localized. It is just, it will take a long time. And what I do think will need to happen is that you're going to need to see more parents like both of yourselves doing it independently and putting your kids ahead and being like, hey, this is an advantage that I think my children should have, and doing it unilaterally on top of this schooling so that until the system catches up, which may never even happen. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, it is a paradigm shift. I mean, Clint, you've it sounds like you've definitely gone there. I mean, I have constant and continuous discussions with my wife. Like once you're kind of at this point where like, it's okay if my kids don't go to college, right? I mean, it's like a paradigm shift on like how they spend their time and what you optimize for, because it becomes less about like, hey, did you get that grade or not? And it's more like, did you actually learn? Like I ask my kids all the time, did you actually learn algebra? Like if I start asking you questions, algebraic questions, do you understand the mathematical concepts behind it? And sometimes I get like a blank stare back and be like, but Dad, I got an A on the test. I'm like, that's not what I asked you. Like I asked you, like, do you understand the mathematical so like, or like biology or whatever they're learning? Like, it's kind of like, I don't really like, once you're like, I don't care if you go to college, man. It's like, I don't care what grade you got. I want to know that you actually like learned something. My wife's like an animal with the writing. Like she's a very good writer, my wife. if they write something and it's like not up to snuff, they probably get a decent grade from their teacher. But like, she's like, go back and rewrite it. Go back and rewrite it. It's like crazy. It's wild. I'm like, thank God I'm not on the receiving end of that, right? But it's intense, man. It's intense. But Clint, like, I mean, are you thinking differently now about like, you know, your daughter's education? If like college isn't the prime, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is the primary outcome for you. So I haven't talked to you about that.
No, it's not actually. My goal for her is to find something that she can fall in love with and do it over and over again. It brings her a lot of joy and is aligned with the principles of who she is as a person, right? And what she wants to accomplish, you know, morally, ethically, et cetera. So I have no, you know, push on her in terms of her going to college. I could care less. And in terms of her learning, I just want her to love learning. So
right. That I think is
you got to fall in love with learning. It is, in my opinion, a really important aspect of just life in general.
Right.
Because if you can love, you know, what's the Steve Jobs quote? Find something you love. I actually think it's about learning to love what you do. Right. Find something to do and then fall in love with what you do.
Right.
And learning is one of those things. If you can fall in love with learning, you can accomplish whatever you want. You can learn. Like we're in the greatest time to live, in my opinion, ever. The closest from thought to manifested into product or tool or resource that we've ever been in humanity's history. And that is profound in terms of what I think it'll do for humanity.
Right.
And I think you have to love to learn in order to be a creative. And so I just want her to be creative and pursue those things.
Yeah. So I think more people are starting to feel that way. I definitely don't think it's the fat part of the normal distribution curve though. Right. So
no,
I think
I'm weird anyway, man. So it's
but this is like, I think this conversation is interesting because I think this is a similar conversation I think we'll be having about AI in a lot of different parts of our lives. Right. So this one just probably, I think, really hits close to home because, you know, a lot of people have children and they obviously want their children to be okay in life and, you know, become full functioning adults and additive to society. And like education is obviously a big part of that. So how you go about education is.
Well, how do you define intelligence? Right. I think that's another thing to think through. Like, how do you define intelligence? Is it knowledge?
Well,
is that?
I would say the fat part of the distribution curve would say a good GPA and getting into a good college, and then subsequently
they would say knowledge. They would say knowledge, right? Knowledge of concept. I think it's about awareness. It's about maximizing awareness and personal opinion. I just think biologically, we know it's a fact that, you know, when you're born, you have far more awareness. You're not be able to conceptualize the awareness, but you have far more awareness of your environment. You're just enthralled by everything. And then over time, you refine that. I think it's all about awareness. And so I think education needs to really consider that. And I want to just, you know, help my daughter maximize and preserve her awareness for as long as possible, because I do think that's intelligence.
Yeah. I mean, look, the last thing I would say on this is Alpha School in New York City is $65,000 a year.
Yeah, it's an alpha price tag.
Yeah, So that's expensive.
I mean, for $200 a month to be your personal speaker, you're probably going to be just as good.
So Clint, like to that point, you know, like there's this aspect of like technology. I think the thought would be that it would drive down the cost of delivering this. So it's interesting to see, like, you know, Alpha School at $65K. I wonder if there'll be other solutions, like, you know, Evan, you mentioned EdTech. EdTech's been around forever, right? I mean, so it'd be interesting to see if folks come along and develop solutions for parents to consider, whether that's tutoring after school or I don't know, whatever. I mean, I can even see people coming up with wearables, right? Where the kids are wearing stuff during school and it's recording their lessons and helping them and whatnot as well. So like there's a whole bunch of interesting applications, I think, for AI, whether it's driven by the school or driven by parents or, you know, any other combination. But I think AI is going to play a bigger role. Like my first grader, I'm convinced, will be doing something with AI within the next 3 or 4 years, right?
It is amazing. I ask people all this because I talk about the 3 mega trends kind of driving investments over the next 20 years. And one of the things we always ask to the crowd is and these are older crowds typically, by the show of hands, who uses AI every week, every day, right? So I start with every week, and then I ask them to drop their hands. 67% of every room uses AI weekly. Think about that. If I'd asked that question a year ago, it never happened. So if these are older people, these are 50 plus,
right,
answering that question, yes. What do you think it looks like in, for kids, man?
Oh, for
digital natives.
It's going to be the calculator. It'd be like, what do you mean I can't use AI to write this?
What are you talking about? Yeah.
It'd be like, someone joked to me the other day. My daughter, I think it was my daughter, the 8th grader. She was like, somebody told me once that they had to do like math, and it was like, what do you think, you'll have a calculator in your pocket? She's like, now you guys all have iPhones. I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Supercomputers, exactly.
So it's like, I mean, come on, man. Like if you ask most people to do long division on a piece of paper, they'd be like,
like these real-time translators. Like, think about it. Like, it's amazing.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm convinced that some of this stuff's going to start to work its way into schools, right? And I don't know if it's going to be like Alpha School where it's 2 hours a day, but I have a feeling this AI stuff's going to start, becoming applicable there. So anyway, this is an investing podcast. I'm sure there's going to be some interesting investing stuff going on here. I wouldn't be surprised to see OpenAI or Anthropic coming out for something for kids. Right? Go ahead, Evan. What do you think?
Well, let's talk about the investing side for a second, because I do feel like ed tech could have its watershed moment similar to the way defense tech had about 3 or 4 years ago, where it was an uninvestable category for a lot of reasons. Mm-hmm. Venture funds and institutions didn't want to touch it. Defense tech, obviously, for its own different mandates. But ed tech, this, again, as I mentioned, the sales cycle, the business model, it's just typically been so challenged. They generally, with the exception of Duolingo, like you really haven't seen a ton of ed tech companies that have had these massive market caps. They don't trade at the growth multiples that all these other services do, because the market in TAM is just so complex and antiquated. And so I do believe that AI being such a paradigm shift from a technological side could unlock a totally independent vertical of education, separate from the existing infrastructure, where, if there is enough demand from the parent side, and we do believe that higher education is going to evolve in a different way than, its traditional structure, it could unlock an entire new market TAM for ed tech and AI-based ed tech. So I do think it could have its watershed moment similar to defense tech from an investing side, if the distribution can get unlocked in some way.
That's well said. That reminds me of a Wall Street Journal article I read, I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks back, but it was basically saying there was a real problem now in at universities, because students are using AI to write papers that are then subsequently sent to the professors, who are increasingly using AI to grade those papers. So you have an AI writing the paper that's being graded then subsequently by a different AI. So no human is actually doing any work. It's just a bunch of AIs going back and forth.
Sounds like a white collar job.
And grading, but then people get their diploma, which is kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like, no one really cares because I got my piece of paper and now I'm off with my job at whatever Fortune 500 company, right? So I don't know. Like, this is to me, some of this stuff is going to be. This is just something's going to happen here, right? And then to your point, Evan, I think there's probably going to be some investment opportunities that I think will be really interesting. So keep your eye on it. Check out Alpha School, right? Those guys are doing some really interesting stuff. Okay, let's just hit on this real quick, and then I want to spend most time on Scale AI. But Circle did an IPO. So Circle's USDC stablecoin, right? It came out $9.6 billion valuation IPO. I had it, this is as of close on Friday, at $21.6 billion. That's up 213%. I'm not sure where it's at today. I didn't look before we got on the phone here, but
it's higher.
Yeah.
It's higher.
Okay, it is. Okay, so IPO was oversubscribed 25 times. And BlackRock got in. They wanted a 10% stake. So, you got Kraken. Gemini announced that they're going to do an IPO now. They filed confidentially, right? Kraken's kind of right there too. And then obviously there's been some regulatory stuff happening with this Genius Act around stable coins, right? But any thoughts, maybe Clint, I'll start with you, man. Any thoughts on just Circle, and maybe just since we're talking with do we talk pre-IPO or any of these crypto related companies
I think
in the private space?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a great performance, and I think it shows there's a tremendous amount of demand for crypto again, especially under an administration that is very the most crypto friendly administration to date, and deregulation is a major windfall for these organizations. And I think when you start to hear the Treasury Secretary talk about stable coins and what that's going to mean for appetites for treasuries, there's and then that company 21 that just came out. Looks, I think this is just the beginning. I think there's a tremendous amount of appetite for crypto. I'm not necessarily sure on crypto exchanges. I'd be interested to hear like what's been going on in some of those secondary transactions for the names like Kraken, et cetera. But stable coins with favorable legislation, deregulation for sure. There's a lot of upside. And so I think you're seeing that just play out in real time. The trend's positive in most crypto markets I follow anyway.
Right. Okay. So Clint liked this kind of stable coin space in the private area. Like, Evan, crypto's been a dog in the private markets, right, for a couple of years now. Do you think this is a sign that things are starting to turn forward a little bit, or is it regulatory driven? Now that we got a new kind of refreshed regulatory environment, we're going to start to see some positive movement again.
Look, crypto is a cyclical market. It has its booms and busts. I think a lot of the companies that we're talking about today, we've already talked about eToro in the past. We're talking about Kraken and Gemini and Circle now. They all tried to hit that IPO window during the last cycle. They all know that the window is not forever. It's not an evergreen. So they got to go out at some point. And so this is their opportunity and they're taking it, whether or not. And look, I think that there are some tailwinds that benefit them specifically from the regulatory side, from the administration side. I mean, when Coinbase went public, it went up and then it went down just like everything else. So I think this is a lot of these companies are seeing that this is an opportunity to get liquidity, to be public, to do the thing they wanted to do in the last cycle and didn't get it done. So that's going to happen. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're like the most amazing businesses in the world, and they still have to operate once they're public and demonstrate the revenues and customer acquisition. And I think it's going to be, it's not like it's a growing TAM, but on the exchange side, at least, it's going to be competitive and it will remain to be competitive. I think the Circle, look, it was a great IPO. Clearly, the market demand was well beyond what they IPO'd at. I think there's been some people on Twitter being like, how did the bankers get this thing so wrong?
Right.
They left a lot of money on the table for themselves and for their stakeholders. So that's kind of unfortunate, which might create, an inverse effect for some of the other companies going public. Maybe they're going to be too expensive. But I think I'm a big believer in digital dollars. I'm a big believer in new forms of sending money in between parties. I think that the existing infrastructure, the ACH rails, it's antiquated and old, and it needs to be revamped. And so I'm excited about this. I do wonder, my pessimist side, at least on the USDC side, is I wonder how much of the stablecoin excitement is really just a regulatory arbitrage. And I say that because there's some, the figure everybody cites is the volume. Oh, there's hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars of stablecoin volume. But then you're like, well, so where's the majority of that volume? It's not enterprise to enterprise. It's primarily crypto transactions, often between parties that are not KYC'd. So oftentimes it's an opportunity for people who want exposure to the US dollar security, but they don't have the means to do it in a regulated way that follows the Patriot Act, et cetera. So look, none of this is to say I'm bullish on the concept of stablecoins, and I believe Circle is an excellent business. I wonder if the hype might be a little too hype at this moment. But it's I think we have like peak stablecoin euphoria right now. And I don't know if it's the sort of thing that today is justified at its value, although long term I think it could be. I expect to pull back on it.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, like, if I think back like 4 or 5 years on just the crypto world in general, there were like a lot of exchanges. You obviously had the respective coins. People were talking a lot about projects, right? So like, oh, you could buy this coin and it's this like project or this type of technology, like a lot of people talked about Ethereum and, kind of the contract aspect of that. And, now there's not a lot of this. I haven't heard anyone really talking about that type of technology in quite some time. Right. But stablecoins seem to have a good foothold. the incumbents are coming in the brokerage side. Like, I don't know. We had talked about that years ago, right? About whether the incumbents were going to come in and kind of gobble up the Coinbases of the world and some of the other ones. Coinbase seems to be okay. NFTs are a total dog. OpenSea, remember OpenSea?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah,
as a real estate,
the JPEG selling a JPEG.
Right.
Was,
yeah. So, so like, good.
I was just gonna say, like, it's like you said that, like, stablecoin. I think stablecoins have product market fit, but this company. Look, we're all pretty digitally savvy. How many of you guys? How many people do you guys know that regularly use stablecoins to buy goods and services?
Oh no, I think this is going to be like JP Morgan sending money around the world with the JP Morgan stablecoin. I think that's kind of like where this is going, right? I don't know if this is like an investable thing. It'd be like a money market fund. Like, everyone's got their own money market fund. It'd be everyone has their own stable coin. And to your point though, Evan, I don't think it, like, you still got to follow the law, right? But
well, yeah,
you don't have to use like Swift, which is a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
right.
I agree. It's the legacy infrastructure sucks, but we also have Fed now. We are moving to a more digitally native rails, even on like the institutional side. Yeah. So I wonder. Look, I think cross-border transactions still have their fee structures.
Right. Well, Stripe's talking about crossing up trades, within this, like, or transactions within the Stripe platform. So like, you don't even have to go through the banks. You just it's like a book. It's like a book entry, right? Like, that's.
Why do you need stablecoins for that? They could just do that.
Every payment system could launch their own blockchain.
Fair enough. Yes. But this is kind of where I think it's going. It's like I think you're gonna see some of this stuff happening. You know what I mean?
The problem with these stablecoins is they're centralized, and I think the whole advantage of crypto is decentralization, in my opinion. So every time you get to these centralized things, it just bugs me. But this is not a knock on Circle. Again, deregulation is a catalyst, and I think you're seeing that catalyst give them an opportunity to raise capital.
Yeah,
I mean, no need to knock it.
Yeah, but it is interesting to see that we had kind of another successful IPO out of there. I mean, CoreWeave now, I think, looking at that, I think people could probably say that's been successful, right? It's up like 2 or 3x. This looks like it came out. It's going to be a banger. So Stripe or Chime is coming out. That's the next one to come out, it looks like. And that looks like it's going to price down from its $25 billion round into like kind of the 11, 12, $13 billion space. So we'll see what that looks like. But
what's your opinion, Aaron, just on like the markets and set in general, just like the froth and you're seeing on the rounds and things like that?
In the private markets, you're saying?
Well, the private to public, a combination of both.
Yeah, look, it is interesting. So CoreWeave came out at 23, where they had done a tender at 23, and then it traded down to 18, and now it's like 70. So, or just under 70. So like, that, maybe if you're the bankers on that, job well done. Like, we came out at 23, it dropped down to 18. Like, oh my gosh, it's up near 60, 70. That's incredible, right?
CoreWeave's at 160.
Yeah, 158.70. It's up 13%.
The market cap. You're talking market cap.
No, I'm talking about the share price.
Share price.
Oh yeah, I'm talking market cap.
76. Yeah, 76.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So with Circle, like, look, this just, to me, it's a show of. I don't think anyone really knows, Evan, to answer your question, right? Like, CoreWeave came out and kind of traded down. They were talking before the IPO, they were going to go at like $35 billion market cap, right? Then it was like light demand. Then it was 23, traded down to 18. Now it's up at near 7. So like, okay. Circle comes out and it's like, it's up big. It's up 200%. And it's up again today. Like, some people would say, oh, you left a lot on the table there. You could have like not diluted yourself as much. You could come out with the higher, like, what were the bankers doing, to your point earlier, right? So it'd be interesting to see what happens with Chime. I think if there's like some consistency here, like kind of more clear line of sight on where the market's falling out on some of these technology companies, then I think it would be easier for more people to come. So if Gemini goes, if Kraken ends up going, Klarna's been floating around out there, if they end up going, like, there's enough out there now, like big companies. So I think we'll have probably a good idea if these guys end up going by the end of 2025. Like, we'll be able to have, I think, a really robust conversation about if this IPO market is officially back open again or not.
We can't even talk valuations anymore, by the way. Like when you see these things run up and they're the minimum name, like Circle's trading already at 13x sales, and then you look at CoreWeave and it's trading at 27 times sales.
Right.
Like what are we? Come on. I mean, no one cares anymore. This is a flow game. Palantir's trading at 90 times sales.
Right.
Well,
right.
the reason, yeah, you're bringing up the point that I'm thinking through is like, it has a little bit of the feeling of 21, where like, and I'll see at the really small level, I'm starting to see early stage rounds. I'm seeing uncapped safes again. I'm seeing like early stage seed and Series A where the revenue multiples are just unjustifiable relative to the valuation, and I'm seeing investors take those terms. Being like, we got to get back into it. So it's just I'm just feeling a little deja vu in that.
This is America, man. There's
valuations don't matter. It's all about printing money. We can print endless amounts of money, and because of that, you can just buy things at 90 times sales.
Direction. There's one direction. This thing
up and to the right.
That's it.
That's why I got an announcement to make later, but that's why the name of my new company essentially means up and to the right. And so it's the only thing we got.
All right. Okay, this is good. Let's hit this last one, then I'll give it to you. You can talk about.
No, I'll do that later. We'll do that next week.
All right, fair enough. All right, so last one, guys. Scale AI. Okay, so Scale AI is data labeling company for AI training, AI infrastructure company, right? You they take your data, they label it. It's now you can train AI models off of this, right? They do a lot of work with the government. They do work with OpenAI, Microsoft, etc. Okay, they had 870 million in revenue in 2024. They're projecting to do 2 billion in revenue in 2025. All right. They had a $14 billion valuation in their May 24 Series F. They just did a tender where the talk is around $25 billion for that secondary market tender. Here's the buzz this weekend. Meta is rumored to be investing $10 billion into Scale AI. Okay. So don't know where the valuation is, but if I was a betting man on a company that's growing this fast, they're not buying half. So I'm thinking it's 20% post money of the take. So that puts Scale AI to $50 billion valuation. So this thing went from 14 to 50. Maybe if it's $40 billion post money, that's 25% for Meta, right? I got to tell you, the reason I brought this up, AI infrastructure to me is, I think, the only place to be. For AI.
Only.
Yeah, okay. Man. Like it is so obvious to me, whether it's CoreWeave and what happened with them. There's some buzz around Lambda Labs, Together IO, Databricks, right? I mean, there's so many great Scale AI infrastructure companies, and everybody is using these guys. Everybody. Like it's becoming so obvious that these things are just an absolute necessity. Grok on chips, Cerebras, NVIDIA, obviously, right? I mean, the forecast, the demands, people can't get electricity. We're changing the laws so people can do nuclear power plants. Like Meta just basically bought a nuclear power company the other day. They didn't buy it, but they did so much business with them. They basically locked them up for like the next 5 to 10 years. So like, this is it. Like, everything's AI. Everything in the world's going AI. And the only way you do AI is with AI infrastructure. So I love this stuff. To me, this is like right here. I agree with it.
It's short term though, right? Because at the end of the day, and I agree with it. I agree completely. I think this is awesome. But we've got essentially this is all about the speed to scale right now.
Yes.
Eventually, when AI gets so good, it's going to be labeling its own data. It's going to work on the configuration and quality control of the data inputs and outputs on its own. That just comes with time. So you're looking at a business here that is what it does. Is it labels, cleans, organizes data so that it creates efficiencies in terms of how AI processes that data. Eventually, that will not be a needed resource. So what are they going to do? Create an AI that replaces them?
Clint, this is what I've been telling people. I'm telling people all of this AI infrastructure stuff is an S curve. Like get in now while it's hot, right? Ride the exponential wave up and then to your point, eventually this stuff will kind of start to plateau off, or it will be so big that the like year over year change will be like it'll still be growing massively, but it would be a very small percentage. So it won't have the kind of the premium that it currently has now. And then that's like when you sell, and hopefully they've gone public by then, or if not, you just sell in the secondary market. But like that to me is like that's what this is. So to your point with Scale AI, AI will innovate and start to label its own data, and then that this will kind of maybe have run its course a little bit if they don't evolve into something else. But I mean, Evan, what do you think of that? Is that S curve? Do you kind of like-minded there, or is that? Do you have a different thought on this AI infrastructure stuff?
I mean, I think that I mean, it depends how you define the word infrastructure, but I agree with you wholeheartedly that investing at the foundational layer of the AI ecosystem is probably a very sound bet at this time, right? Depending on the valuation, and again, it's not going to be like forever investment, because to Clint's point, I do believe there is a world where like someone else's margin is someone else's opportunity. So I'm heavily invested at the infrastructure layer, so I agree with that thesis. For scale, I think this is super fascinating for a number of reasons, but the biggest one is that it's really the person who's investing is Meta, which I think Meta has invested already tens of billions of dollars into AI infrastructure. They have been the voice of open source AI, and I think this is them realizing, hey, I mean, look, they've got an amazing business in the advertising side. They've got it in the information side, and in a lot of ways, Meta is a consumer business. But they realize they don't have a big horse in the B2B business and the enterprise business side. And so this is them saying, well, look, OpenAI has got their Microsoft partnership, Anthropic has got Google, or Anthropic's got Amazon on the seller side, and Google's got their own thing where they're doing Google Workspace. And Facebook did try a bit Facebook for Business sort of play back in the day, a Slack competitor. They have never really nailed the like, hey, how can we get Facebook or Meta products to be used on a regular basis for day-to-day business operations beyond advertising? And so I think this is them saying, look, like, we have a lot of dollars invested in the future of AI. Right now, we are heavily hedged on the consumer side of AI, which I think I'm a big believer in that. To our point earlier that, 60-70% of people are using it on a weekly basis. That's bound to go up. But they don't have a big horse on the enterprise side. So this is them saying, hey, this is a player that sells directly to businesses. They've got a really great business right now. It's humming. We can put 10 billion into it, maybe get 20% of the business, maybe even 15% of the business. But even that 15% stake in a business that could be worth 500 billion to $1 trillion, maybe in a world where AI becomes as big as we think it will be, that's a really nice exposure. Plus, they can push their llama models into that. It just gives them some position in the enterprise space to play with, which I think is super interesting. We have not seen Zuck do this before. So to maybe like piggyback off of that, this is kind of like so Scale does a lot of business with the government, U.S. government, right? Yep. And then Meta also just cut that deal with Anduril where they're doing the headsets now for the military, right? So this is kind of like in just like the last 2 months, they've done like two indirect military or U.S. government deals, which is maybe whiffs of an enterprise type deal, I suppose, right, Evan?
This is a national security issue, and the U.S. through public-private partnerships are going to dump a tremendous amount of capital, trillions, into AI scale, AI infrastructure, and all these companies should just have their hands out, getting ready to just get fed, because that is exactly where it's going to go.
I just love the risk-adjusted return profile of AI infrastructure companies right now. And I think we probably have like 24 months, maybe, at minimum 24 months, I think, where we can gobble this stuff up. And you can still get in companies at like sub $5 billion valuation that I think have potential to be $20-30 billion companies. Like and then who knows, like maybe you get like a Grok, where I think a Grok could be, not investment advice, $100 billion company, right? In the AI infrastructure or kind of the semiconductor space. So like, there's like really like some just really interesting opportunities with a much different risk adjusted return profile than like, an AI app like we were talking about, over the last couple of weeks, where it's like maybe you launch this thing like Evan, we were talking about granola before like Clinton jumped on, right? And then OpenAI announces that they're doing a meeting app, transcription app. Like, so maybe granola is much, much better, right? But is it so much better where they're like people are going to just not use the OpenAI product that they're getting with their subscription to today to go use that? Maybe not. I don't know, but that's tough, man. That's a tough competitor to have, right? So it's a different risk-adjusted return profile, I think.
Well, it goes back to something we talked about like a year ago, and I know Clint will appreciate this because I think this is totally on his thing, which is like it's all about the data, right?
Yeah.
And OpenAI is sitting there saying, well, granola and Gemini, conversations, all these other service providers are getting all that data about the conversations that people are having in their video conferences, and we need an OpenAI needs that to build better models, to build better services, to make their so it's just all coming together.
While we're on the phone here, Apple's doing their developer conference, so I'm dying to see if they're doing anything innovative with AI.
Well, you saw that paper too. You just saw the paper that came out over the weekend, did you not?
No, tell me
about how AI has a problem reasoning. So yeah,
how AI is not really thinking.
So that's the title of it, I think, something like
that's
that.
like as if a tree falls in the forest type stuff. It's like,
I mean, it's like, why even? What is the point of this? Why'd I waste my time reading? I just plugged in the chat GPT and said, "Give me the summary point."
That's right. Yeah. Okay, fellas, let's end it there. This has been a good one. I appreciate your time. All right, boys. All right, I'll talk to you guys next week. Cheers.
Yeah.